What is going on, guys? It is Wrestlelamia here, back with some more news. Join us now as we look at the wildest news stories and rumors you need to know, including whether Chris Jericho caused a massive COVID outbreak, Stephanie McMahon claims Vince is listening to the fans, Tessa Blanchard returns to wrestling, a new NXT champion, and much more. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Now let's hit the intro and get straight into the first story. Now our first story looks at whether Chris Jericho caused a COVID outbreak. Alarming news is being reported concerning August Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, an event where Chris Jericho and his band Fozzy performed. A story from Mother Jones indicates, according to a new study which tracked anonymized cell phone data from the rally, over 250,000 coronavirus cases have now been tied to the 10-day event, one of the largest to be held since the start of the pandemic. It drew motorcycle enthusiasts from all around the country, many of whom were seen without face coverings inside crowded bars, restaurants, and other indoor establishments. The explosion in cases, the study from the German-based IZA Institute of Labor Economics finds, is expected to reach $12 billion in public health costs. The Sturgis rally was held over 10 days and brought in an estimated 500,000 people. Jericho was criticized for performing concerts at the rally, which saw numerous people disregarding social distancing and mask wearing. What's even more disturbing is that Jericho worked an AEW event just days after Sturgis, putting his co-workers at risk. While Jericho is only one component of the event, his involvement was short-sighted and clearly ignorant of the health risks it presented, whether he tested negative or not. Next up, Stephanie McMahon says Vince is listening to the fans. The WWE Universe can sit back and relax now because Stephanie McMahon recently revealed that Papa Vince does indeed listen to the fans. Speaking on the Gary Vee podcast, the billion-dollar princess claimed, "Vince listens to the fans, he listens to the live audience, he listens to social media, he also listens to our employees. He's always said you never know where a great idea is going to come from. He solicits that opinion, he talks to people." Despite a wrestling product that more than a few fans might describe as piss poor, Stephanie's comments can put our fears to rest. Now, of course, while Vince may listen to people, including fans, Stephanie didn't say whether he lets this input sway his decision-making. After all, there's been numerous reports of Vince not even listening to his own writers, thus why would he even bother listening to the fans? Next up, some big news coming out of NXT as Finn Balor is the new champion. Congratulations to Finn Balor, who captured his second NXT championship at Super Tuesday last night after defeating Adam Cole. Balor has been in NXT since October last year, and while it was felt that the former Universal Champion might shake things up on the black and gold brand, his presence there has been a little underwhelming. Balor's championship win could make for some interesting matches for NXT, which focuses more on in-ring action than Raw and SmackDown. Whether or not he adds any star power to the title will be something to watch over the next few months. Next up, Vince fails to make Forbes' top 400 richest. Now, sad news for Vince McMahon, who fell from Forbes' top 400 rich Americans list this year. Vinnie Mac had previously made the cut, but with the lowest entry coming in at $2.1 billion, he just didn't have enough. Now, if you're wondering, Jeff Bezos came in at number 1 with a reported net worth of $179 billion, and Bill Gates is a distant second with $85 billion. McMahon's wrestling rival Shad Khan, who owns All Elite Wrestling and the NFL franchise the Jacksonville Jaguars and other business ventures, came in the list at number 66 with a net worth of $7.8 billion. Here's what Forbes had to say about Mr. McMahon. The chairman and CEO of WWE fell off the list this year as his shares of his media and live events company slid 30% in the first 7 months of 2020. In April, WWE announced it had furloughed a portion of its workforce and reduced executive and board member salaries, resulting in an estimated monthly saving of $4 million. McMahon spent some $200 million to relaunch an NFL competitor called XFL this year. In March, the coronavirus forced XFL to cancel its 2020 season, and weeks later, the company filed for bankruptcy. Hopefully, Vince won't be embarrassed when he sees his fellow billionaires now that he's no longer among the elite of the elite. Next up, Renee Young talks role in AEW. Renee Young's 8-year career with the WWE ended at this year's SummerSlam, and while she claims she's under a 1-year non-compete clause from working in any wrestling promotion, talk inevitably turns to a possible role in All Elite Wrestling. During a chat with Richard Deitch on the Sports Media podcast, Renee discussed her ideal job in AEW. I think if it was something that ever were to come up working in AEW, I don't think that putting me on commentary is the right move. Even when I started doing commentary, I was stoked to do that, but it was never a goal of mine. My dreams are not dashed by being on commentary. I tried to pitch to the head writers of SmackDown to use me like UFC uses Megan O'Leary, and she feels like an important part of the broadcast. I think that roaming reporter type of role would be awesome with any wrestling company. She also discussed the surprising ease with which she exited the WWE and a reason for leaving. Keep in mind too that I was not under a contract, I was just a WWE employee, so all I had to do was put my 2-week notice in. It felt very bizarre, but I texted with Hunter and Steph. I went and said goodbye to Vince and everyone on my last day, but everyone just kinda knew where I was at. They understood that with my skill set, there's just not much for me to do right now. Where would you guys like to see Renee work? Let us know in the comments down below. Next up, Tessa Blanchard returns to wrestling. Wrestling's hottest female free agent, Tessa Blanchard, is returning to the ring, and while it's unknown what her long-term plans are, fans can finally see her as she's scheduled to wrestle on the 12th September in Chicago, Illinois. Blanchard will battle Kylie Ray at the Warrior Wrestling Stadium Series, competing for the Women's Championship. Could she be preparing for a run in a major promotion anytime soon? Of course, we'll report on it when the news comes through. Next up, Raw is falling apart backstage. Raw is a big mess backstage. Don't believe us? Well, according to Sportskeeda's Gary Cassidy, Raw is falling apart backstage. Cassidy quoted one source as saying Raw has really fallen apart without Paul Heyman driving the creative, and noted SmackDown has a driving force behind it. Raw does not. I'm told there is an urgency to get the show done in time for promotions or to get talent's input. Fans wondering why there were no matches promoted for Raw until shortly before the show should consider what Cassidy had to say on 7th September. I reached out an hour ago when nothing was announced for Raw. Just got a response from someone in the know. Apparently Vince McMahon hadn't looked at the show until this morning, and talent last night was being pitched under the provision Vince hasn't read the show yet. As we noted over the last few weeks, Raw and SmackDown seem like two entirely different shows in terms of quality, and we may now know why. Once upon a time, Raw was the WWE's flagship show, but now it's a battered relic that continues to sink. Next up, Rusev wanted to wrestle Kurt Angle, but WWE was afraid Angle would die. Speaking of Rusev, the former WWE performer's Bulgarian Brute played a terrific anti-American heel at one point in his career, as seen by his flag match against John Cena at 2017's Battleground event. As good as this match was, Rusev wanted an All-American opponent in the ring, and few wrestlers personify All-American as much as Kurt Angle. During his Twitch stream, Miro recalled,
"And I wanted to wrestle Kurt. I said, hey," and I talked to two people. I'm not gonna say who they are. They're really up there. And I say, hey, I want to, how about we bring Kurt? I think it's gonna be great. One, he's the greatest professional wrestler ever. Two, just USA coming back, and I was still the Russian, I was still doing the Russian flag, the Putin and everything. Kurt would have been the perfect person. They told me no, they're afraid. This is verbatim. He said, we don't want to feel responsible if he comes back and dies. That's for somebody that I spoke to about it. And there were two people there. If one says I lie, hopefully the other one can say that it's true. Which I doubt, but it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me if anybody's going to confirm my story, because unlike Dave Meltzer, I was there when that happened. Yeah, and at the end, man, he got that match with Corbin. I always wanted to wrestle Kurt.
Rusev would have been a great opponent for Angle, but was the WWE concerned with Angle's health, or were they simply unwilling to book Rusev in what could have been one of the biggest matches of his career? Next up is Billie Kay being written off television. Potentially sad news if you're a fan of Billie Kay from the Iconics. Now that the WWE has split up the talented team, fans are wondering what's next for Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. While there are lots of rumors that Royce is headed for a strong push, things may not be so good for Kay. During a recent Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer noted, "It's very clear that they have no plans for Billie Kay. Billie Kay might be going away and they know it. With any luck, she will avoid being future endeavored." And finally, Alexa Bliss has a new podcast. Last but not least, you've probably heard talk of Alexa Bliss joining Corey Graves and The New Day with their own WWE podcast, and now WWE has made things official. they issued the following statement. Uncool with Alexa Bliss, a new podcast series debuting on Tuesday, September 22nd. Hosted by WWE superstar Alexa Bliss, the podcast would transport listeners back in time when Bliss and her guests discuss their most nostalgic, cringeworthy, and laugh-out-loud moments from before their fame and success. Alexa Bliss's personality seems to make her an ideal candidate for hosting a podcast, and you can be sure the WWE will bring in loads of stars to help her out. But you guys plan on listening to the Little Miss Bliss's podcast? Let us know in the comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Facebook for exclusive lists, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.